Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started in just a minute. Hi, everyone. So I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, starting our 2022-2023 Priority Technology webinar series, using computer vision as a risk mitigation tool. My name is Sarah Isher, and I am the Senior Program Manager for Work to Zero. Just to start, let's get engaged. Introduce yourself in the chat with your name, company, your interests in technology. Share your experiences. We're not successful unless we can share those stories and help others get more engaged with this type of technology. And also let us know how Work to Zero can support you. Also, ask us questions in the Q&A tab. So if you take a look at the bottom of your screen, you should see the Q&A tab. Put your questions there. We'll have time to answer those at the end of the webinar. Also, on your chat feature, make sure you're sending those to all participants, not just the host, so that way everyone can see your questions. And with that, I'd like to start with what is Work to Zero? We are a grant-funded initiative within the National Safety Council, and we are really focused on making innovation accessible to employers, so that way we can eliminate fatality risk in the workplace, and we'd like to do that with technology. So we are full believers that there are promising technology solutions available now on the market, and we really just want to get the word out about how these types of technologies can be used to save lives in the workplace. So we are excited to have you all here. And we'd also like to share with you our safety innovation journey. We've spent the last, about year or so putting together this curated safety innovation journey for you all. You can find that at nsc.org/work to zero. And really, this is just kind of to help you get there. So first, we want you to assess your risk. Before you can implement a technology solution, we want you to understand what your risks are in the workplace. Then from there, you can identify tech solutions. And I'm sure that's why you're all here today, is to look at some of those solutions, followed by determining your readiness and then making the business case. And then we have a pilot and implementation roadmap. So no matter where you are in this journey, we welcome you. We'd love to hear your story. Please check out our website to learn more. So what step 2 was exploring technology solutions. Hopefully that's why you're joining us today. We have a lot of information about, I think, 13 different types of technologies. In our priority technology series, we have webinars, white papers, case studies, all of that. So if there's a certain type of technology that you'd like to look at or learn more, check out our website. As far as priority technologies, those that we have chosen to really take a deep dive into those further. Last year, we started pushing out information on immersive technologies, so VR and AR, drones, proximity sensors, and fatigue wearables and monitoring. And this year, we're really excited to kick it off with computer vision and camera analytics, followed by EHS software and mobile apps, data and artificial intelligence, and then robotics. So today, we'd like to really dig into computer vision. So what is computer vision? I'm sure a lot of you have heard of camera analytics or video monitoring, computer vision. So really, we'd like to kind of set the stage with what that is. And we have shared in our report that computer vision is a field of artificial intelligence that trains computers to interpret and understand the visual world. Using digital images from cameras and videos and deep learning models, machines can accurately identify and classify objects and then react to what they see. And if you'd like to learn more about our white paper that we just released today, a member of the Work to Zero team, I'm sure will put the link in the chat. And that's where you can really take a deep dive on top of what we're going to talk about today and learn more about what is computer vision, what are the different risks that it can help mitigate, and also case studies and best practices. So to get into our conversation today about, how can this type of technology be used to create safer workplaces, we have invited Ron. We're going to be having a focused discussion on an organization's use of computer vision. So I'd like to welcome Ron to the webinar.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks a lot. Let me start by already apologizing in advance. I mean, it's in the middle of dinner time and bath time of my two kids, and I'm next to the bathroom, so you might be hearing some background noises. And worst case, somebody might punch in. So already, my apologies for that. So having said that, yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm very excited to talk here and tell about like some of the practical experiences that we have with introducing computer vision in General Electric. So just a little bit about myself. So I'm a senior director at GE Gas Power for quality and EHS. I overlook the complete program. I've been doing this for the past 3 years. And it's my responsibility to support business in their journey and in making, let's say, GE Gas Power a safer place. So there's under my responsibility, for example, a team that does reporting, that really, let's say, does all the Tableau reporting and all the insights for our EHS business. We have our standard EHS tool. We're using Gen Suite as a core application for EHS. So there's some projects ongoing that, and on top of that, I always like to look, what's beyond and emerging technologies. So that's why I kind of, let's say, started looking into computer vision. I also started something this year on virtual reality. We're doing something, for example, in e-meters, where we want to implement, meters to kind of measure like how much energy we consume and improve our CO2 footprint. That's something as well, which is quite emerging. To have, let's say, real-time insights about your consumption. Those are just 3 examples of things that we are looking at. So before that, I mean, I work since 20 years. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm based in Switzerland, and before my journey in GE, which started in 2010, I've been working at Deloitte as a management consultant. So that's very briefly something about myself. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And I love to hear about the different technologies that you're using. So it's good to know that we can come back to you as an expert for future webinars.
Sure.
So really, to dig into this conversation, Ron, can you share how your organization is using this technology specifically for high-risk situations?
Sure. I mean, let's move to the next slide, and I mean, I'll just maybe take a few minutes just to ground and why we started it and when we started this. So this whole idea kind of came up in 2019. There's a lot on the slide. I won't talk about everything, but I mean, it all starts in 2019 in one of our regions in Asia, where there was a project, and there were a lot of, let's say, concerns and some of the accidents that happened because of people not wearing their PPE. And that's where they kind of reached out to that local Asian IT team and saying like, look, I mean, what can we do to, let's say, check if people have their PPE equipment. And that's where quite a young team based in Asia say like, hey, there is something computer vision. We've had that in school. I have experience with that. We've done that before. And they started that kind of, let's say, as an internal project. And they actually developed their own computer vision model. There was actually, let's say, kind of like a port at the entrance of the project site, where people had to go in, and there was a camera, and it would detect, and it would show with traffic lights whether they are compliant or not. So and that kind of caught the attention in our organization, and then it got to me as well, and we're really thinking about like, how can we scale that up? And of course, we're selling, so to say, gas turbines. So developing our own models for artificial intelligence is not a core business. So we really thought about like, okay, this is a great idea. The technology is proven. We got the excitement. How can we really take this to the next level? And by coincidence, I attended a webinar from Benchmark, and they kind of, let's say, showed what they're doing, and they had as well a topic on emerging technologies. And I saw that they had a partnership with a company called Integration Wizards. They're now in the meantime they're called Spark Cognition. That they're now part of a bigger company called Spark Cognition. And what really, let's say, caught my attention is that they have a partnership. So anything that is detected through the technology, through the cameras and through the solution from Spark Cognition, is automatically through interface creating a concern in our Gen suite. And I thought like that's perfect, right? So I was very interested. I reached out to them. We also looked, of course, at other vendors, what's on the market, not just to blindly jump on one. And that's kind of, let's say, how the journey started. As you can see, like from 2019, 2021 till now, we've done a lot of things. There's some further questions on, the challenges, which I'm happy to talk about that because it took me a long while to get to where I am right now. And I'm happy to share that, why that is. But basically, at the moment, we are so far that we're doing pilots at 3 supply chain locations, one in Dammam in Saudi, one in a site close to Budapest in Hungary, and one in Singapore. We like to do this pilot just to, next to, let's say, as well, the pilot that we had at the project site to really prove, let's say, more use cases and prove that the vendor's technology and see that everything works as expected before, taking this as a standard product. So the furthest are we with our site in Saudi. It's now up and running. Technically, we are all done. It's technically it's on and it's already creating concerns in our test system. So we already see the results and it's really amazing. I can tell more about that later. I was really, really pleased to see after all these months that we have something concrete. So very excited. I mean, it's very, very promising. But right now, it's up to business to do the communications that we can turn it on, which is expected next month. But I mean, nevertheless, I can really share, let's say, the outcomes. And already based on the test cases, I've showed it internally, and that was already enough to get people really excited about this. So more to come. For next year, I requested budget to do this full-fledged at 3 supply chain locations plus 3 additional supply chain sites. And I really have the vision to even use this on our customer sites as even maybe as an offering to when we do outages to say to a customer, hey, we have technology, we can implement like a couple of cameras and really, let's say, do PPE detection and like, I don't know, working from heights and other use cases where we can really help to make this project site more safer. I mean, that's the vision that I have in a nutshell. So yeah, we're definitely using this technology kind of to wrap up on this slide. So there's multiple use cases, but we are really using this for PPE detection, as you can see in the top right corner, PPE detection, moving objects. I mean, we have, for example, in our Hungary site, they were very interested in that because there's a lot of forklifts and there were accidents happening with collisions between forklifts and people. So we can actually, through this pilot in Hungary, we can track, if forklifts are getting close to people and even track the speed of the forklifts, because that's sometimes the root cause. I mean, that they were just driving too fast. So that's something that we can detect as well and raise concerns. Then we have lifting operations. That's something as well in supply chain. I mean, we're lifting, pretty heavy stuff, right? We're really, let's say, building gas turbines. So lifting that, I mean, that's a couple of 1,000 tons, right? So it's very dangerous. So that's something as well that we can really track with lifting, if people are close to it. And then there was just, an additional, let's say, use case person down, right? I mean, hopefully we won't be, having any concerns about that because if somebody really drops on the floor, I mean, something is really wrong. But that's something that we activated as well. So these are, let's say, the 4 use cases that we're actually using to, let's say, mitigate some risks in these areas. So let me stop here.
Perfect. So what I'm really hearing is that, you understood the risks at your operations. These are the main 4, risks that you were really dealing with. You had increase in injuries around these, and computer vision is really a tool that can be used across a breadth of different risks and hazardous situations, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, exactly. That's multiple use cases that the vendor has. And, the good thing of partnering up with a vendor that has multiple customers and has off-the-shelf use cases. I mean, like, EHS is not a competitive business, right? So, I mean, if Siemens comes up with a use case and the vendor can use it for other customers, I mean, then we can as well, benefit from that, right? So, I mean, having a good vendor that is quite big and has, good named customers, you can really use those things as well. For example, working from heights is another use case that we didn't activate, but they have that, right? And the concept is that you kind of pay per camera and the number of use cases that you use on the camera. So if we have one camera and the camera covers an area in the supply chain location, which we know has lifting, but also working from height, you can on one camera, you can activate 2 use cases, and then it would track, both use cases, at the same time, or multiple use cases, right? There's no limit. So yeah, we have a limited, pilot, but we already know that the vendor has multiple use cases, which are very interesting for us.
Great. So moving to the next question, I heard you talk about asking for budget and putting that forward. I think that kind of leads into a question within a question that I thought about. So how did you make the business case to leadership that, I need to request this budget. This is a project worth fighting for. And then also, can you elaborate on the benefits of using this technology?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's always a very interesting discussion with EHS on budget and business case, right? I've been to EHS events where I even hear companies that that they don't make any business case at all, right? I mean, they say like it's all about risk, right? I mean, if you don't do this, or if you don't use this technology, you're kind of accepting the risk, right? So it's really to mitigate risk, which is very, very difficult to, let's say, put out in dollar value, right? So, but the things that we have on a slide is not really something which is very concrete and saying you would save so much money in using this technology, but it's really, let's say, like, what are the risks that you can mitigate, right? So I really show, let's say, my leadership is like, this is the investment, and these are the potential things, which is, the downside is the risk, right? I mean, it's like, for example, your medical cost. If you have a big accident in a factory, you need to shut down the factory, so you lose production as well, right? So that loss of production, which costs money. And then you have, for example, your image, right? I mean, especially in customer sites, right? I mean, that's you're at the customer, and if an accident there happens, and you have, in worst case, somebody loses his life, that really comes in the media, and you have, let's say, very, you have to think about your image as well, right? So you can, let's say, look at, business case and put that in a dollar value. We're working on that, but it's not really science, and not really, let's say, as simple as other topics. So that about, I would say, the budget, and the cost. I mean, I know, right? I know how expensive it is to implement it at one site. I mean, you have like the hardware aspect, you have like the installation. That's the one-off cost of the installation, is the hardware and the installation, and then you have the recurring cost of the license, which I show to business. And then I typically see the downside of taking those risks, and what could happen if you don't have something like this in place, right? So that's what I use. Other benefits, I like to to kind of quote what the EHS leader from the MAM said. He said, like, okay, this is like a 24/7 Gemba walk, right? And that's a benefit as well, right? Someone has to walk the site and detect if someone is not wearing the PPE, or if someone of a forklift is driving where he shouldn't, or driving too fast. You really rely on people to see that and to raise that in the system, right? And he said, like, this is like a 24/7 Gamba. So I mean, he's very excited about that, because I mean, he has, let's say, now a system helping him to let's say, keep that site a safe place to work. There's a factory here close to where I live and where I work, in Beer, and when I was there, and I always feel responsible to at least look around and raise some concerns. And just a funny example, I saw one driving a forklift and eating a muesli bar, and I thought, like, that's not really safe, right? So I kind of took the opportunity to raise the concern. But I mean, I really need to go back to my desk or workplace and open up the system, record it, and then send it off, right? I'm not saying that eating a muesli bar is something that we train an AI model on, so that's not something so we're not that far. It's technically probably possible, but I don't think it's a good business case. But I mean, all jokes aside, but I mean, you rely on people, raising the concerns, and now you have a system that does that for you.
Right. So not only can the technology be used to really mitigate those hazards, but it can be used as an advocate for the EHS professional. I mean, my previous life, I was, a EHS professional on site, and I know how busy people are. So if we can use this as a tool to help us be the eyes and ears at all times, it's great.
Exactly. Yeah. Another benefit is what I think about this solution is, with CCTV, I mean, we have that in our sites as well. And CCTV is very difficult to implement because it's not anonymized, and, you record people, and you have, let's say, the work councils, which are very concerned about that, who can access that data. They're protective of their employees. And this technology is anonymizing the feed, right? So whatever concern they find, that snapshot is kind of saved, but before it's saved is anonymized, right? So the face and everything that is there that could link the person to a name is anonymized. So I think that is a great, let's say, pro as well from this solution. It's not CCTV, right? It really captures if it sees something and saves it, erases it, and anonymizes it. So I think that is really, let's say, a good benefit as well of this system. And overall, I would say the benefit is that it would give you a trends for improvement, right? I mean, in Hungary, if now 24/7 they record the forklifts, again, you can have the best solution in place, right? If nobody does something with the data and take action on it, I mean, you will not change, right? So we thought about that, and we have very nice dashboards in Tableau that will really show, let's say, which area in the factory has which concern, which use case. So I mean, if you would see, like, always in the same area in the factory that the forklift is overspeeding, you need to kind of, let's say, put this in, I don't know, the canteen, or in your meeting that you have with the people, and let's say share that information so that you change the behavior. And then hopefully, and that's something that I really expect as well as an outcome of this, hopefully you would see that your concerns for speeding for forklifts actually through this technology will go down, right? And then I hold, let's say, the key to let's say convincing the leadership to use this technology, right? If I can show that through this technology that things are changing and those concerns are going down, that then is exactly something that I would that I need to move forward. So it's that's about the reporting, I would say.
Yeah,
And
so
yeah,
you talked about the
go ahead.
dashboard. What are some of those some of the things that you are keeping track of on that dashboard, or you plan to?
So the dashboard is really, let's say, showing, let's say, I would say lagging, right? So I mean, it really shows you, like, let's go to the factory that we have in Dammam. It would show you the factory. It would show you, let's say, the concerns, per area, or the concerns per use case, and then and then let's well per week, right? So that you can really see, and you can really, let's say, get actionable insights, and that's something that we provide. So, good question. So right now it's more, let's say, we create a concern, and then, we expect someone to follow up. But of course, I have as well in my vision that, if we see, for example, a person and a forklift on collision mode in the factory, we, as a next phase, I mean, that's something that I have in a product roadmap as well for next year. We would like to maybe, get an alarm in the factory, right? So that it's not only just a concern, but if we see that something is happening and we can really, let's say, intervene and we can warn people, we're thinking about that as well. Like, how can we effectively, let's say, notify the people that we see something, that's happening, and making sure that we can prevent something as well. So that's another aspect that we're looking at. But that's not something that we have in the pilot at the moment. So the pilot is really the reporting, and through, let's say, actionable insights, show that to.
It looks like I have lost Ron. Can someone let me know if they can still hear me in the chat? Okay, can still hear me, but it looks like we lost him. Something I wanted to kind of touch on, he's talking about not just focusing on reporting and incidents, but really focusing on proactively looking and taking care of those incidents. So it's really getting from lagging indicators to the leading indicators. And I see we have Ron back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yes. I don't know what
I can
happened.
hear you. Great.
I get kicked out.
That's okay. Perfectly fine. I was just touching on how, we're no longer using this technology. We can get away from only worrying about incidents and recordables, but we can really focus on what is causing those incidents and how we can get ahead of them.
Yep.
Perfect. So I saw a question that came up in the chat. I wanted to cover it now, just because you were talking about with CCTV and anonymizing individuals. How did you get employees to overcome or accept the so-called Big Brother aspect of monitoring for PPE? and how fast they're driving a forklift lift.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I plan to share it as well in one of your later questions, where you say, like, what are some of the best practices, and like one of my takeaways was that, me starting on this, I really thought I can implement something like this in a couple of months, right? And it took me, almost a year, or over a year, right, to get to where I am right now. And these are the things that's really the challenge, right? I would say, buying the cameras, the hardware, and doing the wiring at the factory, and working with the vendor, and hooking it up, and building the interface with Gen Suite. That technical, I mean, it has challenges as well, but I mean, that will not take you a year to do, right? That's a couple of weeks, months to do that. So the IT work was kind of, let's say, not really the heavy lifting of this project, and it was exactly like you said, it's overcoming those challenges with privacy, right? I mean, the first time I wanted to say, like, okay, let's do it at the factory, and it says, hang on, Ron, why don't you talk to the GDPR person first? And a lot of good questions and concerns, which I didn't really think about before, right? So really an internal review, and a lot of questions from a person which is based in France, which is, he knows all the challenges. And France is one of the countries where it's quite tough, right, with the work councils and things like that. They're very protective. So to really, let's say, overcome that, I mean, that was really let's say a lot of work, right? And it took a lot of weeks, a lot of months, and a lot of reviews to kind of prove, and the vendor needed to share, and we need to give proof that finally we got the sign off from our internal GDPR, right? I mean, that took quite a while, right? So that was one of the challenges. And yeah, I mean, to your question, like, how do we overcome it? I think, and we see that now, right? Like, technically we are ready for the MAM to go live, right? And then we are expecting the local team to send out the communication that this technology will be rolled out, right? And you have to be very careful about the wordings, right? I mean, like, for example, I mean, if you would say, like, we put this solution in place to change the behavior of the people, that has a very negative aspect, right? I mean, of course, maybe you hope that would happen, but it's not how you should communicate it, right? So it's really, let's say, how you position this technology. And I mean, I tend to position this technology, really say to the site and to the people, this will help you to make your place, your workplace, a safer place to work, right? I mean, this is protection. We really, let's say, want to, let's say, make this place safer by detecting potential hazards, and be proactive about it, and solve these issues, right? It's really a matter of how you position it, right? So if you choose your wordings wrongly, it might have a very negative aspect, and people say, oh, and then, just like you said, this big brother is watching you. But I mean, if you position it differently, people really tend to see as well the positive aspect of this.
Right. So it's really coming back to, no matter what kind of technology or pilot project or whatever we're doing, we need to ensure that we're having this kind of human-centered design, right? That we're not just focusing on what the technology can do, but how people can interact with the technology to improve work sites.
Yeah.
So are there any other best practices or challenges that you can share? I'm sure there's plenty of challenges, and that's what we're here for, right? To learn from those early adopters, so that way the rest of us can succeed.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, just for people like me that work for a big company, that has a lot of internal processes, a complicated matrix of, even within IT, like different teams being responsible for security, different teams being responsible for architecture, is that, it takes time, right, to implement something like this. And one thing is this GDPR review, right? I mean, it's before you even, let's say, start with implementing, I mean, you need to get the approval of GDPR. We had even reviews with legal, right? I mean, like, are there any legal aspects? I mean, what would happen in the US, right? If people would would sue us, and they know that there is this technology, and they would ask the footage, right? I mean, for example, what will be an aspect of that, right? So we had a lot of reviews. So that's one of my, like, if someone wants to, and from IT or from business wants to implement technology, is really take your time, and really, let's say, start with introducing the idea and the aspect in the organization, very, very early. Other aspects is, it took us a lot of time to get the security review done. Everybody probably on a call working for other companies know, the cybersecurity and the risks that implementing something like this and a vendor going on your network. So, I mean, there were like very tough reviews internally to really say like, okay, how can we, make sure that this is safe, right? And how can we really make sure that nobody can go, hack on our cameras and then, maybe, get as well to our machines in the factory, right? Because that will be the worst case scenario, right? So how can you, let's say, distinguish between the networks and things like that? I'm not going to bore you with the details, but these were kind of aspects as well that we had to do a complete, security review, architecture review, and that that whole review probably took us about 7 months, to finally get the vendor okay, the architecture okay, GDPR, legal, all the sign-offs that really said like, finally now we can go to, let's say, building the solution and starting with a pilot. Yeah, and then I would say that's like me as a global team, right? I mean, like a global IT team working with all the global teams, with architecture, security to get all the approvals. But then you get the challenge with the local team, right? I mean, like you need to take time there as well, on at your site where you want to design it, right? You really need to think about what is the expected outcome. So look at your your statistics. Where do you have most of your concerns or your incidents happening? What do you expect outcome? And that would really, let's say, drive as well where you locate the cameras and how many cameras you need. So you need to really spend some time with the local team on the design and get their engagement. And I had, from the 3 sides, I had 2 which were very engaged, very interested, and 1 side which was not really that interested, and we really have to push. And you really see that if you get a good engagement and excitement with the business team about this technology, that things go much faster and much easier than if you have to push it from an IT perspective. So that's maybe another takeaway that I want to share.
So what I'm really hearing there is that you need to have this group of digital champions, right? And include
Yeah.
lots of different aspects. So whether it be yourself from an EHS person, the digital technologists, IT, management, production, you really have to have this well-rounded approach, and understand that you're having the right people in the room to have conversations.
Exactly. Yeah. You need to really set up, let's say, a cross-functional team or like a matrix team, and all need to have that same priority and that same excitement, right, to work on it, right? Yeah. Maybe one thing to mention as well is, like, in the current conditions, there's problem with the supply chain on hardware. So we've had that as well, right? I mean, that you order the hardware, you think that would only take a couple of weeks, but it takes months because the stuff is not on stock, right? I mean, because of the current situation in the supply chain in the world. So that's something that we've had challenges as well with, so some delays. And another thing is that try to not only talk to the EHS person of that site, but as well, let's say, engage very quickly with HR and things like that from that side, because every country has this unique expectations and a way of communicating something like that. And that's what we had in demand, right? So that's why we thought we had all the global approvals, and then we went to the site and then it's okay, can you communicate? And then we had some additional questions from the local team, and as well, like the local legal team and the local HR team, which is very protective of their employees, which is logic. So that's something as well, right? I mean, that's something that I would say as well, is that you can really, let's say, be proactive about that as well. So yeah, these are some of the points that I just like to share.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think what you're describing is really a great representation of one of our resources that Work to Zero has put together, our pilot and implementation roadmap. And I think a member of the Work to Zero team will put that in the chat. But it really focuses on, there are these steps that we have to work through to be successful, and you need to make sure that you're bringing in the right parties and also managing that like you would any management of change or continuous improvement project. So before we go into attendee Q&A, are there any last thoughts on any of the questions or on your pilot and implementation project?
No last thoughts. I mean, like I said, I'm very excited about technology. It was sometimes challenging and sometimes frustrating at some point, but I mean, like, to be where I am right now and to actually see, let's say, the footage from the cameras and see that in our test system, because the system is now live, right? I mean, to really see that in the test system, now the cameras are really, let's say, detecting if forklifts are speeding or if people get too close, and to really, let's say, see in our Gen Suite system, the concern created, and looking at the footage and the quality of the picture as well, and the quality of the footage, because we have, let's say, very good cameras with high resolution. That is just very, very exciting. So I think this is the beginning of a long journey, and embracing this technology in our organization. I think it has a really great potential.
Great. I look forward to kind of following your journey as you move through this.
Yeah. By the way, I did try my best to get some approval from legal, but I just got back from vacation on Monday to share some of the screenshots that I have, like something that will be very interesting for the people. Unfortunately, I didn't get any approval. So I mean, there are pictures of our supply chain sites. I mean, I need to get approval. I didn't get that. So maybe next time. But I mean,
Yeah,
that was a bit of a pity.
We'll stay in touch to put a case study together. So now I'd like to kind of move to Q&A. So just a reminder, attendees, please put your questions in the Q&A tab as we'll start going through those. So Ron, what other types of safety technology can be paired with this, or what are other technologies that you're looking at?
So I mean, like I said before, being very proactive in warnings. So that's something I think would link very much and very good to this technology, right? I mean, to get real time warnings and warnings out to the people, right? And then in the factory, it's very difficult to do it in an effective way. But for example, like a traffic light, or let's say a sound, or we even thinking about like maybe we can, based on, let's say, the type of concern detected, that we say like that there's like an audio saying, let's say, watch out, collision, or something like that. I mean, that's something that is audible. And maybe in the future, even thinking about wearables, right? I mean, that people wear something and that they can get a buzz or something like that they get warned. But I mean, that's not really the safest way of doing it either, because then people get distracted. But I mean, these are the things that we're working. I think that's where I think the technology has some opportunity as well, is to really, let's say, get some real-time notifications to the people.
So there was a question in the chat, and since you're from, GE is a large global corporation, someone asked, is there a company from a vehicle pedestrian safety aspect that can be supported globally? For example, is there someone that can support South America, North America, China, India, Germany? They're struggling to find technology that can be used across units globally without using different suppliers.
Like specific computer vision suppliers, or?
It looks like just talking about vehicle pedestrian safety, so maybe computer vision.
Okay. If this is regarding computer vision, I mean, there's this vendor that we have is a global vendor, right? So for computer vision, once you have, let's say, the use cases and the models trained, it doesn't matter where you put the camera and where you turn it on, right? I mean, there's by definition, the vendor that you use for computer vision is a global vendor, because the solution, I mean, the use case is applicable everywhere, right? But maybe if you have, let's say, very, let's say, localized, requirements and specifics, if the company is good enough, I mean, they can train the model, and like for that specific use case locally. So yeah, our vendor. So there's a question as well, which vendor we use. It's called Spark Cognition, or Integration Wizards, how they were before. I mean, they're like a proper size, right? I mean, like, so if there's a use case, they would actually help us. Like, for example, in the Gemtech factory, we had some challenges detecting the PPE, right? I mean, like we had to have a high resolution camera, because they have to look at if persons are wearing earplugs or not, right? So, and they really helped us with that, to do that specifically for our site, and really train their models in a better way so that our requirements were covered. So yeah, our vendor is global, but I think if you look for a vendor, I mean, just make sure that, look at their customers and see if there's like big names in it. And if that fulfills your requirements of what you're expecting, I mean, then, they should be global.
Perfect. So for a business entering this space, where do you think is the best place to start? And do you think there are low-cost options for beginners or employers with smaller budgets?
Yeah. that will be something as well, of course, for the for the vendor to reply to. I think yes, there are low cost options available, and for example, it really depends on where you start, right? So on a customer side, if you really want to track, let's say, the outside of the customer side, where a lot of, let's say, lifting is happening, things like that, you might not need a lot of cameras, right? So the cost is really, let's say, driven by the number of cameras and the number of use cases. So the less cameras you need, the lower the price will be. I mean, that was my takeaway. What the best place is to start. I mean, I decided to go with a supply chain site because it's pretty safe, right? I mean, it's our site. I mean, we have, I have local IT people on our site, so that's probably a bit easier for me to implement that and to, let's say, quickly do a proof of concept. But now for example, I shared some of the the test results with business, and they're very interested in saying like, yeah, Ron, I mean, that's really great that you do it in supply chain, but that's a very, let's say, environment which is quite, let's say, under control, right? If you look at our customer sides, I mean, we have contractors, other people working which are not GE, so that's where our biggest risks are. So it's really depending. Like my strategy is really to get something quickly and get results, which I decided to do in the supply chain. And that's how I got what I wanted, right? I got the enthusiasm of the business, and now they're coming to me saying it will be great if you do it at the customer side. Whereas if I would start at the customer side, I would get all kind of, let's say, challenges, and it might take me even longer, right? So it's just, I can't say what the best strategy is for you, but that's the reason why I did what I did.
So for your solution or technology, did you already have cameras in place, or did you have to buy them for this project?
Good question. So the supplier says that if you have CCTV cameras available on your site, they can use them, right? You don't need to have specific cameras. So if you have a site where you have a CCTV system, and it's on a network, and the solution can tap into that network, that's technically possible. You can reuse the cameras that you already have. Having said that, I know that internally we have some challenges. So, for example, in our Hungary site, they said that that then you come with the issue with the work council and things like that, right? So they say like our CCTV system is really, let's say, a separate network and very, very protected, and only people that we know should have access to that. So they actually, let's say, they did not allow us to use those cameras and that network, right? Because I mean, then additional people would go on the cameras and have access to the footage. So that's why on that side we installed separate cameras and an additional network for the solution. So it really depends on local requirements. But yeah, long story short, if you have cameras, technically, of course, you can use them.
Perfect. So I think it's really, computer vision could be a great solution for someone that's just getting into safety technology, right? Because if they already have cameras, maybe they just need to add some more. Or if they have a lack of, safety professionals or a lack of resources on site, it's a great way to understand the landscape in the workplace. So one final question that we have from the audience, was there a KPI or benefit that surprised you that did not play out like you thought? And on that, what did you not expect?
Good question. So it's still that we're not live yet, right? So we're going live in next month. So I can't really answer the question on the KPIs, like if there was any surprise. My expectation is, for example, this, like I said before, I mean, is that we would get, let's say, more people, or let's say multiple concerns created, right? That was actually one of the concerns from the EHS leader, saying like, wow, if now someone manually creates a concern, every concern needs to be, taken seriously and needs to be closed, right? If I now have a system that creates, I don't know, just exaggerate 100 concerns per day, right? I mean, he would have a lot of work in looking into them and close them, right? So that was the other aspect of it. But I mean, like, hopefully we get much more data on concerns and get much more better insights, so that, like I said, for example, forklifts, I mean, how often they are speeding. Normally you don't have that data, right? Because nobody is there with a speed gun or something like that, detecting if they're speeding. And now you have that with like low, investment of just a camera. So yeah, my expectation is that we get like very interesting insights. I mean, it's a bit early to say, I was very, very impressed about like how accurate the camera is in detecting that forklifts and people are getting too close to each other. Like in a test environment, we saw the pictures and like, wow, that actually happens quite a lot, right? So that was quite surprising as well, that how frequent and on that location forklifts and people got together in a too close proximity of the setting of the computer vision. So yeah, I'm a bit early to say. Hopefully, I answered your question, and maybe in a next meeting I can give you more insights.
Perfect. Well, it looks like we have a couple more. Oh, it looks like people are just engaging in the chat, which is great. We don't have any more questions in that tab. So Ron, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us. It's been
You're
really
welcome.
great to hear your insights and hear how you're working through this pilot process. So thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Just a couple more things to finish up. If you are someone that's interested in accelerating technology and advancing adoption, let us know. We have a partnership with Safety Tech Accelerator, and we're really working to help employers pilot these technologies. So if you'd like to become a pilot site or you're interested in learning more, email us at work2zero@nsc.org. And also would like to put a plug in about technology solutions that exist today to better protect your workforce when it comes to workplace violence risks. We have just put out a report and playbook at nsc.org/WPV Tech. And it really focuses on how can we proactively put solutions in prior to having this type of trauma in the workplace. And computer vision is one of those solutions. So if you're interested in computer vision, I'd recommend you also look at our white paper on workplace violence, because it's a problem in all work sites. Finally, I'd like to have you save the date for the future of EHS in 2023. So we are looking forward to extending everyone an invitation to everyone to come and see us there. We'll have sessions on safety technology. We'll have an interactive safety technology pavilion, so that way you can actually see the tech in action. That's the end of January, beginning of February. And before I let you go, I would like to ask you a few questions. So I'm going to launch a poll to really understand, are you currently using computer vision technology? And how much did this webinar help you out? We really appreciate you answering these questions. It helps us do our job better. It helps us understand, how many of you are using the technology and what we can do to improve in the future. Looks like we're getting some great engagement there. Thank you so much for joining us today. Just to let you know, we do have some priority technology reports and webinars coming up. Computer vision is just a start for us this year. In December, we will be releasing EHS software and mobile applications. And next year, we'll be releasing information on data and artificial intelligence and also robotics. So stay tuned. If you're interested in any of those, we'll have resources for you in the near future. And with that, I would like to thank you all for joining us. It's been great to have this conversation. I love the engagement in the chat. Hope you all have a great day. Thanks.